Well, the Supreme Court decided in September that in the case of the Elkhart Four, it's not murder, but rather a burglary that had no foreseeable deadly consequences when the teens broke into their neighbor's home. The story started just about 3 years ago in the city of Elkhart, with 5 individuals and what they call a bad mistake. As you'll see, where they are now feels like an entirely different life. It's just after count, roughly 11 a.m., and the inmates at Wabash Valley are in transit. Blake Lehman and Levi Sparks fall in line, some of the youngest inmates at the prison.
I say I've been here for 3 years. I've been locked up for 3 years, but I mean, it feels like so much longer. I had to mature because this is no place for a kid.
What brought them to Wabash Valley they describe as a bad mistake with a deadly consequence no one expected. On October 3rd, 2012, a group of 5 friends thought no one would be inside this Francis Street home. But when the oldest of the group was shot and killed by the homeowner, and Blake shot in the leg, the rest went down for murder.
When it happened, it was like, what are they talking about?
Blake Lehman and Jose Quiros were 16 at the time of their arrest. Levi Sparks was only 17, and Anthony Sharp Jr., 18 years old.
I just put my hands behind my back. And then I happened to look behind and it was like, what am I being arrested for? And then that's when he told me murder. And it was, everything just like stopped for a second, like, hold on, what are you talking about?
What happened inside unraveled quickly. Lehman, Sharp, Quiros, and 21-year-old Danzel Johnson broke through the 2 back doors to get into the kitchen. Within minutes, gunshots.
And I heard a bang, and then I jumped up, like looked around, like, okay, if they're doing this, why are they being so loud? And then I heard about like another 3, 4.
Still sitting on that porch, Levi Sparks received a phone call on Lehman's cell, a mayday telling him to come across the street. But it was too late. Quiros fled out the side window. Sharp managed to escape the scene, but Blake Lehman and Danzel Johnson were hiding inside a closet, both shot. Danzel fatally.
You know when you get an adrenaline rush and you start like shaking real bad, heart starts beating, well, yeah, that's kind of what happened to me.
Their fates became more bleak from there. The Elkhart Four, as they've been known, were about to be dubbed murderers. When the trial rolled around the following summer, 3 of the 4 were tried jointly. Quiros had accepted a plea deal for 45 years.
It needed to be tried in order to find a good resolution for the boys, because ultimately, the way the law was written, it would be pretty tough.
Defense attorney Vincent Campiti represented Levi Sparks through the trial and appeal. He hoped the jury would convict the teens of burglary. But after 4 days of testimony, 5 hours of deliberation, all 3 were found guilty of felony murder.
To suggest that the 16-year-old, the 17-year-old was convincing and forcing or making and had a huge impact on the oldest kid there, to do this seems to me ridiculous.
In Indiana, murder occurs when someone kills another human being while committing or attempting to commit a felony. In this case, a burglary.
When they said guilty, I could hear my mom in the audience, and I was like the one, it was the one voice I heard over everyone.
The punishment they faced, 45 to 65 years.
When they read it off, I just put my head down and shook my head because it was kind of like I was in another blank space, like when I first got arrested.
And it was an emotional sentencing. Circuit Court Judge Terry Shoemaker handed out a 50-year term for Sparks, 55 years for Lehman and Sharp. But that wouldn't be the end.
Reverse the conviction.
Their case made it all the way to the Indiana Supreme Court. On September 18th of this year, the answer they'd been waiting for.
Heart dropped. I'm like, oh man, I hope he's right.
The Supreme Court had thrown out their murder convictions.
Yeah, everyone was like, why are you smiling so big as there? You don't even know.
But will others share a similar path? The Supreme Court didn't throw out its current interpretation of the law, which allows co-defendants to be convicted of murder. Those decisions of who to charge and with what still lie with local prosecutors. Now, we asked you the question on Facebook, do you think whether the Elkhart Four are guilty of murder under this law? 28% voted in, saying no, they disagree with that conviction. But the majority, 65%, voted yes, they feel the boys were rightfully convicted by the original court. 7% said they were undecided.
Tricia Harte is there live to tell us what she's seeing from her vantage point. Tricia?
Well, Maureen, we've talked about the procession all morning. Of course, first we have the presiders and servers from the Mass leading the way into Holy Cross Community Cemetery, followed by members of the Holy Cross clergy, of the provincial, and of course the Hesburgh family walking. The hearse is expected, it's coming around the corner right now. It's been laying about 2/3 of the way back. Now, a story here, we've talked to the man in charge of essentially transporting Father Hesburgh around during his tenure at the university, and he said that this was a place where Father Hesburgh used to stop by on his way out of town to say a prayer for some of the priests who are buried here.
Yellow tape marked the boundary of Metro Homicide's latest crime scene.
It's been a busy week.
3 deaths in just a matter of days.
It's been a pretty exhausting week so far, but yeah, another shooting, another stupid shooting.
Friday, homicide detectives were called to 6th Street in Mishawaka for a deadly domestic dispute. The victim, 22-year-old Precious Jackson, and the main suspect, the 18-year-old father of Jackson's 1-month-old infant daughter.
She was in the middle of the road.
Neighbors wishing to remain off camera heard the couple walk down the road, loudly fighting about something, with 2 toddlers and the couple's young baby in tow.
They crossed the house and they were arguing, and then came down here and then down the road further, and we just heard several gunshots.
Johnson took off from the scene, considered to be armed and dangerous, leaving the children and Jackson exposed.
We have other toddlers who obviously just witnessed their mother being killed in the street, and anytime there's kids involved, we all have kids, so it makes it difficult.
Crowds gathered Friday.
This is such a tragedy. She's got 4 little kids.
Some less shocked than others to hear that Johnson is suspected of pulling the trigger.
When I got what she said, then I just was like, oh my God, he finally did it. He finally did it. Sorry.
All signs point to campaign season.
People are hitting it real hard this last week.
But without this, a paid-for disclaimer, candidates can be in big trouble.
That is Indiana law.
Chief Deputy Clerk in Elkhart County Chris Anderson said this year 3 formal complaints cited candidates' failure to indicate who paid for certain campaign materials.
I've been on the election board for 2 going on 3 years, and this is my first encounter with such a complaint.
Goshen mayoral hopeful Jeremy Stutzman, a Democrat, failed to mark who paid for this large barnside sign. He corrected it before the meeting, writing in the contributor's name.
That is what it comes down to, is public oversight, seeing where the money is coming from, who's supporting what candidates. 3 candidates running as independents under the Elkhart Party, Jason Moreno, Rose Rivera, and Tom Butler, failed to put paid-for disclaimers on this handout.
When you run for office and you forget to put a disclaimer on something and you get the threat of being turned over to the prosecutor's office, can be pretty daunting.
5th District Democratic hopeful in Goshen, Adam Scharf, failed to originally mark who paid for these handmade signs.
Little that I think about, even as an election board member, that it didn't have the disclaimer on it. But you need to know those things. Ignorance is definitely not an excuse when you become a candidate.
According to the Indiana Election Division, financial disclaimers are required on larger items like newspaper ads, billboards, signs, posters, yard signs, leaflets and circulars, and mail sent to more than 100 people. Scharf and Stutzman both published videos on social media, a new area of campaigning not currently covered by finance law.
Well, Terry, it goes hand in hand with several of the changes we've already seen throughout the city. The wider sidewalks, the bumped out street parking, bike lanes, quite possibly most noticeable, the change of several one-way streets into 2-way traffic flows. It's the model right here on Jefferson Boulevard that the city hopes to recreate in other parts of the downtown.
At first glance, it may seem like an aesthetic change.
I'm convinced that this will be a shot in the arm for downtown.
But work done on South Bend city streets is much more than that.
There's a lot of research showing that when you make smart choices in how our streets are laid out, everything from walkability and bike lanes to better managing traffic flow, you can actually add to the life expectancy of a community. So there's a lot at stake in getting this right.
Introduced first in 2013, it took until November 2015 for the Board of Public Works to adopt the Complete Streets policy policy resolution.
The principles really are about making sure that you have space that's allocated equally to pedestrians and to the motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists.
The model was tested on Jefferson Boulevard, with wider sidewalks, two-way traffic, and room for bicycles.
My favorite thing about initiatives like what happened on Jefferson is that some of the biggest critics wound up being the biggest supporters after they could see it.
Further traffic analysis found that 85% of people going downtown are going there as a destination, not just passing through. But the one-way streets, city officials fear speed drivers through the area.
We're certainly seeing a lot more interest. If you talk to the folks at DTSB, they'll tell you that there's a lot more interest in the retail spaces downtown since the announcement of the two-way conversion project.
Interest from developers, projects like the LaSalle Hotel, Chase Tower, and Hoffman property renovations, city officials think were sparked by the Complete Streets project.
Now, several businesses were slow to get on board with some of these initial proposals and changes, but after hearing about the increased foot traffic and pedestrian traffic, as well as increased opportunity for parking spaces, many of those initial skeptics have since gotten on board when seeing what this change can actually look like.
It feels exciting. You know, I'm looking through my turnout gear, and it's like exactly the way that I remember it.
On with my coat.
But I'm not exactly the way that I was, you know, a year and a half ago. Things have changed a lot for me.
It took 529 days to get to this point.
I don't know, I have to be careful because I don't want the tears to flow just yet.
A seemingly unflappable firefighter, Joshua Camo, returned to full duty at Station 4. But the journey back to work was not an easy one.
It's like my first day, you know, when I was sworn on, I was like, what am I doing? You know, and you know, that confidence that's going to come from that first call, you know, where we don't sideswipe the truck because I'm not driving.
What he now looks back on and laughs at was a life-saving accident. On June 4th, 2014, Josh's brain started to fail. At that point, he learned he had an avocado-sized brain tumor and was diagnosed with glioblastoma, a rare and deadly form of brain cancer.
This is my scan.
We first met Josh just 3 months after undergoing brain surgery. At that point, he was singing about his cancer. Yes, singing.
Why do we have to die? I looked at myself like I was Superman, you know, because I could do whatever I wanted and my body just had to keep up. It just had to. I never gave it an option.
It's that determination that helped Josh through radiation and chemotherapy. His strength comes from his family, faith, and music. A whole YouTube channel worth of songs, divinely inspired diary entries of his recovery.
Music has always been kind of my passion, and that's how I kind of communicate feelings, experiences, and stuff like that. So throughout the process of the whole past year and a half or whatever it's been, that has helped me kind of unpack a lot of the stuff that I've been going through.
Joshua Camo, glioblastoma stage 4 brain cancer survivor. I'm losing track of the days, it's getting so much.
It's hard to believe that someone so sick, with a 15-month life expectancy after surgery, would look so healthy, running the Sunburst 5K on the 1-year anniversary of his diagnosis.
If I believe that God will never give me more than I can handle, then that makes any day approachable.
Taking it one day at a time.
My body might not be up to what it used to, and that's okay. I've got to learn what I can do now.
So for now, it's back to the familiar sights and sounds of the firehouse, his routine, his second family, and a greater understanding that only cancer survivors may ever truly know.
I've walked away from this with some good side effects, you know, an increase in patience, an increase in gratitude, thankfulness. You know, these are all good side effects of cancer.
All right, carry on. All right.